let's talk about Derek Carr, because this is
What?
going to be the first domino that falls. Carr's contract, he has a huge roster bonus set to be guaranteed on the 15th of February, meaning that a possible trade and or cut scenario would likely have to happen before that date. Otherwise, the Raiders are going to be on the hook for all that money. And basically, the main reason they're getting rid of him is because of how expensive he's going to be. So they're not going to want to pay all this money to Derek Carr for him to go play on another team anyway. Not going to happen. The Raiders have already said if they can't trade him, they're going to cut him. And Matt, we've had a lot of talks off air about, and even on this show, what other teams do we think could be in the sweepstakes for, a major veteran quarterback like a Derek Carr? And we don't think there's that many that can actually afford him and have a need, and also don't have a young guy in place that they could reasonably give starting reps to and try and see what they have in. It's really the Jets, the Commanders, maybe
Falcons?
they have Ritter,
Yeah, but do they
and
trust
he's no, you can't. I wouldn't say 100% for sure. Yes, they trust Desmond Ritter, but they have somebody. And are they going to be in the position where is Derek Carr what sets them over the edge, or is it their awful defense?
Yeah.
Is that going to be the move that you're looking to make? I don't. I really think it's the Jets and the Commanders are the two options from everything that I've seen. Depending on what happens in Tennessee, that's an interesting option, but they also have Malik Willis. I think Malik Willis is the type of guy that could use some time learning from a veteran, and maybe that's what'll sell the Titans on a Derek Carr, but they don't have a ton of money, to work with either, and they got to figure out Ryan Tannehill's contract. So there's not a lot of other options. And so I really feel like for the Jets, as much as you want to be in a position where you want to trade for the guy ahead of time, make sure you get the rights to him and all of that, I feel like this is going to come down to Carr getting released, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, I almost guarantee that. I don't think anybody's gonna take on that contract. Uh, it's very unlikely. The only other team that maybe does Patriots if they're looking to move on for Mac Jones.
They interviewed Bill O'Brien for offensive coordinator
Mhm.
today, it was reported, and he worked with Mac Jones before. So
Okay,
my thought
so
would be, if they're doing that, is that this is a guy that Mac already knows and is familiar with. Let's give him the best shot to succeed. And he's already familiar with New England and Patriots. He's been their offensive coordinator before.
yeah, I mean with Mac Jones, they saw what he could do his rookie year. And he worked his way into the top 100 and voted on by the players. But the second year kind of fell flat, and I wonder how much they're gonna really put that on Matt Patricia, maybe more so than Mac Jones.
Right.
So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they want to stick with Mac Jones. I also wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to move on. Uh, and yeah, that's pretty much it as far as teams that can maybe trade for him. So yeah, it's very unlikely, and it's most likely going to come to him being cut. Then it's more who can who can really pay him what he wants. Uh, that would less than that contract, uh, while also being a place that he actually wants to go.
Yeah, this is a question I wanted to ask you, Matt, because I really want to get your opinion on this. I think this is going to be a really, really interesting decision that the Jets are going to have to make. Because if he does get cut, that's going to create a bidding war for
Yes,
the
it
few
is.
teams that are interested. For however many it ends up being, it is going to create a bidding war. And I think the logical sell behind a Derek Carr is that you have a guy who's likely going to be cut that you can sign to a new contract. And in classic Joe Douglas fashion, you give him a 3-year deal that's really a 1.5-year deal. And you test him for a year. And if things go well, great. You continue to ride him out and you can build around your team and you feel like you got your guy and you're a contender for that period of time. And if not, you can cut bait relatively easily, not have a lot of dead money tied up, and you can try and find whatever you're going to do next without having to have it to turn into the Raiders and now have a bunch of extra money set to be paid for a guy you don't want to pay anymore. That's best case scenario for the Jets, but I don't know if best case scenario is realistic. So I want to get your opinion on this. If the Jets can't sign Derek Carr to a deal, let's just say for anything that allows them to get out for any fewer than 3 years, are you still willing to do it or not?
So if we're going to be penciled in for 4+ years, uh, with an expensive contract with a guy who struggled last
Right.
year, was still better than anything we've ever seen or haven't seen it for a long time. But at the same time, who knows if he's regressing? Uh, All right. So I would say no. And here's why. I, as a fan, would say no because I don't have a job invested in this. I, if he doesn't, if I'm thinking more long term, where I don't want to have to be forced to watch Carr regress and struggle, uh, and just be overall not good. Where I don't know if JD has that luxury to say no, because if he says no, the pickings are very slim, and the reality that his job is on the line gets a little bit more realistic. So me, my job's not on the line. I could say no. JD, I don't think he can say no.
And that's going to be the really interesting question because I think you're 100% right. Is for Joe Douglas, you can't go 5-11 or 5-12 next year. Like that's a complete and total abject failure. There's too much talent on this team now. We've seen the flashes of what they can be, and with another year of development, they should be even better. You went 7-10, 7-10 with quarterback struggles all year and an offensive line that couldn't block anybody. There is reason to still be hopeful for the future of this team. And I feel like you have to give yourself somewhat of a reasonable shot. You can't just punt on 2023 because you're not sure who your quarterback's going to be. And it leads to the logical idea that if Derek Carr is there to be had and he's still going to be cheaper than Rodgers and he's still going to be cheaper than Lamar Jackson, and you don't have to give up draft capital for him like you would for those two, it can be an understanding sell because not often do quarterbacks of his caliber, for better or worse, become available like this. Where I don't think that I kind of compare it to maybe a Kirk Cousins situation where Kirk Cousins gets however much money he wants guaranteed on the open market at the time and gets his fully guaranteed deal and all of that. And has Kirk Cousins been okay for the Vikings? Yeah, but has he ever been enough to, get them over the hump and go and win in the playoffs? No, they just lost in the first round. And Kirk Cousins playing poorly as well as the rest of the offense was a big reason why that happened. So I really think that this is a you have to do something situation, and it might force JD's hand a little more. But I'm going to be honest, I'm with you. If I have to pencil myself in for at least guaranteed 3 years of Derek Carr for good or for bad, that's a scary sell to me because that's going to be a lot of money tied in. That means that you were getting outbid to start with, and that you had to come up and meet other prices and add guarantees and add years onto a deal for some amount of added security for Carr. And then I'm thinking, at some point you have to get someone after him. And you have young stars on this team that are going to need to be paid. Derek Carr's 31 right now. He's going to be 32 by the start of the 2023 season. At least 3 years after that puts Derek Carr at 35. Is Derek Carr at 35 going to be worth what we're going to be paying 31-year-old Derek Carr? I'm not sure, and I don't want to sit there and guarantee myself into having to find out.
Yeah. And you know what? If Carr doesn't work out, JD won't be around to deal with that cap repercussion. So
No,
he
no.
doesn't
If
really
they
have a
give
lot
him
to
this
lose.
giant deal and Carr outright flounders, then he loses his job completely, and
Yeah.
so does Sala. And then it's we're hitting the reset, and you're going to have some of the best guys on your team likely going to have to be free agents to make room for the cap that you can't afford anymore.
Yep.
That's like, and then you've completely wasted any good things that you did in the past few years. This is such a risky move, quite honestly, Matt. I want to talk about a situation before we wrap up here that I think is being underrated in this, question as a whole. And a lot of fans have starry eyes and are swinging for the fences and hoping for the best. And it's the offseason. It's the time for that. I get it. I think there's a better than expected or better than realized chance that the Jets starting quarterback in 2023 is Mike White.
That makes me nervous too. I mean, what? So, do you think that JD would put more faith in White than he would a Jimmy Garoppolo?
I think all of the rest of them are going to be too expensive, and I think Garoppolo's too injury prone and too old to lead them to have any sort of future. Again, if Lafleur was still at OC, I could think there would be more of a sell for Jimmy. But you're going to have Jimmy come in and learn a new offense, and after pretty much everyone agrees that it's Kyle Shanahan making everything look good, and you don't have a Kyle Shanahan, what I feel like you're going to be spending so much more for Jimmy G than for what you possibly could get out of Mike White. Even if at the end of the day their play is equal, I think you're spending probably half to a third of what you would be spending on Garoppolo for Mike White.
Yeah, but what if
And
Mike White is only good because of the Shanahan offense as well?
then you didn't waste a bunch of more money. Then you're in the same boat you would be if you sign Carr for a bunch of money and he fails, or you sign Jimmy for a 1 year, $35 million deal, and that makes you have to push Quinnen's extension back a year, and then he has to play on the tag, and that affects your cap. You're in the same boat regardless. So I feel like right now, if I was putting money down, if you gun to my head, you made me pick what's going to happen for 2023, and I had to stand by it. I think it's Derek Carr. Like that's it. It makes too much sense logically for age, timing, Carr looking for a new team, the other teams that are available to be had, the Jets having a need, still having a window. And if they can create a situation where they can form a contract that they can get out of relatively easily, and that can be agreed to by Derek Carr's camp, I don't think there's going to be anything that'll stop the Jets from doing it. But I
Yeah.
think if the price gets too high and the bidding war gets too extreme, and Carr wants a 5 year, $200 million contract, I don't think that JD could. I think JD might seriously think about pulling that trigger. And I really think that at that point he might go, let's build the rest of the team. Let's continue to improve this roster that still needs some help. We still need to solidify our offensive line. Let's roll with Mike White, give him an opportunity to see what he can do with healthy ribs and a full year getting to be the starting quarterback. And in the meantime, if things don't work out, we'll go to head to 2024 as a better overall team. And we're that much closer to actually being a quarterback away. And if we can find one, then we'll be really cooking. This is a scary, scary situation for me where I'm really worried that Derek Carr is just going to outprice the Jets.
And he might, but can you imagine the uproar if we go into the season with Mike White and Zach Wilson as the guys competing for the starting spot?
You won't
no
hear
matter
it
who
from
our
me
OC.
if Derek Carr signs with the Commanders for $200 million, then you're not going to hear a complaint from me. Like there's not many options, and I'm going to try and be realistic and understand that their hands are really tied in a lot of ways, and there really isn't much that they can do to improve to where if it ends up being Mike White and Zach Wilson, am I going to be over the moon about it? No, but am I going to sit there and go, you completely and totally failed, and you should have thrown any amount of money at Derek Carr you wanted for him to maybe be good? Like look at Matthew Stafford in LA, where injuries pile up immediately shortly after the second year he's in the career. He wins a Super Bowl the first year they're there, and then immediately the Rams are awful because all the other guys on their team were getting hurt and injured, and they didn't have any depth behind it because they've traded away all their draft picks. Well, if you run out of money because you're paying Quinnen Williams to be the best defensive tackle in football, and you're paying Elijah Vera Tucker to be one of the best guards, and then you're paying Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson to be the top of the league of their positions, is Derek Carr in 4 years still going to be worth what you're going to pay him right now and having to pay all those other guys to make sure your team can still function? I'm going to be honest. I think they're going to sign him. Like I think it's going to happen, and I think it's probably going to be for more money than either of us would be comfortable with. But I think if it gets to that extreme point of top market value, I could see Douglas backing out.
I mean, I guess, but I think there are other options before I would go to White and Zach as their top two. I would probably bring in Brissett or even Andy Dalton for that matter.
Let's talk about that a little bit then. What are some of the lesser down options? You had already mentioned Brissett and Dalton. I had already said if it's between Love and Mayfield that I think I would go, Baker Mayfield, because at least he's been somewhat of a starter. Who else could we possibly throw in here as a less than exciting guy that isn't Mike White or Zach Wilson if the Jets miss out on Carr?
The only three other guys I would even mention are Dalton, Brissett, and maybe Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush had a good string of games where he looked very competent for the Cowboys.
No Minshew?
Uh, maybe I don't know. Watching him with that stacked Eagles team and fluttering kind of made me nervous.
That's a fair point. That is a very fair point. I
Or
don't think there's any way Tom Brady's realistic because, quite honestly, I think Tom Brady's going to the Raiders.
that would be interesting. I don't know why he's not retiring. How is this guy not retiring? He's gonna be what, 47 years old?
He's a psychopath. He's a complete and total psychopath. The only thing he cares about is being the greatest possible dude of all time, regardless of anything else. He literally gave up his family and wife to go and try and continue to win more Super Bowls to widen the amazing lead he already has. Dude's insane. Like, dude's a complete and total psychopath. I'm not ever going to try and understand Brady. You know how much avocado ice cream has probably rotted his brain?
See, but you know what? That's if Revis can win a Super Bowl with the Patriots, and maybe we can win one with Brady. I don't think he would ever go to us, but I think that bridge has been burned over the years of him destroying us. I don't think he would ever go to the Jets, but it's an intriguing thought. If he does play, yeah, he's probably most likely going to Raiders or somewhere else. So again, that falls back to the other guys that we were talking about.
Now, here's a question for you. And I want to be very clear that I'm not saying that I expect this to happen, that I have any info saying it's going to happen, nothing whatsoever. This is just purely speculation in January before we have any real set in stone idea of how things are going to work out for the draft. But what if there's a scenario where the Seattle Seahawks trade up for the first overall pick and they're looking to take a quarterback and they don't keep Geno Smith?
Oh,
Is
well,
that an option you look into?
absolutely. Absolutely. It's not he doesn't look like he's how old is Geno Smith these days? He's
He's at least
33?
31. I was gonna say, I
I
think I
think he's
remember him being
33.
he's older than Derek Carr because Geno was in the 2013 draft as a senior, and Carr, I think, was also a senior but came out in 2014.
Let's say 32. Or and so if he's available, I think he instantly uh is a better option than maybe even Carr, actually. If that's the case,
He
if
will
the
be
Seahawks do that.
33 in 2023.
Got it. All right, so he's 32 now. Yeah, he would be up there with Carr, if not my top choice. Do you think he would want to come back?
You know what I honestly think might happen if that was the case? I think Geno would sign like a 1-year prove it deal and then use the Jets to go and get a better job the year after.
Really, at this age, do you think he's willing to do a prove it deal after the season he just had as one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL?
I think the only team that would be willing to give him that much money right now out the gate is Seattle. And if he wants that long term consideration, that it's going to come from them. And if he were to go to another team, that they would likely give him kind of like what I was talking about with Joe Douglas. It looks like it's a 3-year deal, but in reality, it's like 1 year if you're cut after June 1st. And they can move on relatively quickly without much dead money. I feel like it's still teams got to be a little more sold overall. He played very, very well this year, and I would definitely bring him in too. But I just feel like Seattle has the locker room, and the support of knowing him to want to bring him back. But, they have, I think it's the 4th overall pick currently from their trade with Denver, and they have their own first round pick as well. They have the ammo to move up already. And if they don't keep Geno, they have the need. So it's again January speculation. I'm not expecting this to happen or saying it will, but I think it's an interesting situation to monitor because if the Seahawks let Geno Smith out of the building, then I think that signals that they're going to move up for a quarterback.
If they're smart, I think they should bring Geno back and draft a quarterback and just ride Geno for maybe one of those 3-year deals that we wish JD gives Carr. And then gives the rookie time to develop. That's pretty much what we should have done with Zach.
Yeah. And in all seriousness, it probably is. And maybe that is their plan. It's definitely going to be interesting to be seen. The important thing for everyone to remember, the Derek Carr domino is the most important domino. And it's going to be the one that falls first before anything else. So right now, it will Derek Carr be a Jet? Yes or no? We will likely know that by the end of February, and if not, that's when you're looking at some of these other options. But right now, I think the only quarterback to be concerned about until proven otherwise is Derek Carr.
Absolutely. Yep. And then the teeth start, grinding after that if that falls through. But yeah, everybody put all your eggs in that basket until that basket falls.